Hi, this is Tony, Director of MusicLegacyInternational.com. Today we're going to talk about the band Foghat that evolved in the late 60s from the band Savoy Brown. And Roger Earl, one of the founding members, has seen a lot of changes in the music industry in his over 50 years in the music business. He's assembled a great team of artists for this new album that released in November of this year. Brian Bassett, slide guitar, Rodney O'Quinn, bass guitar, and amazing guitarist Scott Holt, who's our guest today to talk about the new release. In the past 10 years, Scott has been playing with blues legend Buddy Guy and has been with Foghat now for about 3 years. How long? You've been with these guys for a long time, right? I mean, maybe not as Foghat, but you know them for a long time.
Roger and I go back to about 2014.
Okay.
A mutual friend of ours introduced us to each other, and we hit it off immediately. Started writing songs together and just kind of clicking, you know. And the first project that we worked on was Under the Influence. And they needed like 3 songs to complete the record. They needed 3 more songs to write. And Brian and Roger and I got together and wrote about 17.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So we had all these extra songs left over. So we put out a record called Earl and the Agitators. And
yes.
Tried to figure out a way to make that coexist with Foghat, but it was impossible because we were opening for Foghat. So 3/4 of Foghat was playing double shows, you know.
I've heard that story.
Yeah,
I've heard that story.
Crazy.
You guys are playing and then one more guy comes in, right?
Yeah. I'd walk off and Charlie would walk on and then it's Foghat. So we were down in Florida working on what became Sonic Mojo, which was our most recent record. And I wasn't in the band. I was just down there to do some co-writing and stuff. And Charlie decided to retire. And so, within the span of like a day, Roger and I talked about it. He said, "Do you want to join the band?" I'm like, "Absolutely." You know, I'd wanted to work with Roger since the first time we met. And I tried every way that I could. And he was trying to work with me too, but we just, it just hadn't happened yet. So when this opportunity came up, and it was pretty short notice. They were looking at about 2 weeks before they started touring. So I had to immediately start learning the Foghat set list, and trying to understand that. And it was a new thing for me because I came from a school of everything's improvised and there's no discussion about keys or tempos or anything. You follow Buddy Guy, and that's how I learned. And so when I got in this band, there's parts, and if you don't do your part at this specific moment, you're going to derail everybody. So the pressure was tremendous because I was like, I don't want to be the guy that screws this up.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to get my feet under me. I was pretty nervous, but they were real patient with me and they worked with me, and they're just good guys. They're good musicians, but they're good people, and I'm
Right.
blessed to have them in my life, you know.
Yeah, they are definitely good people. Just from the short time that I got to spend with them at the Blender Theater, they were very nice people. And so now, tell me a little bit about this On Tonsils, on Tonsils and Sneakers.
And Sneakers, yeah. We did a song on the last record called Black Days and Blue Nights that was about Rod Price, the original lead guitarist.
Right.
And Roger and Linda wanted to do a song about Dave. And so, Roger and I sat down and he just kind of told me some stuff about where Dave came from, how he got his start and everything. And I wrote it. He said, he was raised on Electric Avenue. That was the name of the street that he lived on when he was a kid. So I just had that in my mind, and that was my title for the song was going to be Electric Avenue. And when you ever hear it, you'll realize that's kind of where the song was pointed. But I tried to put as much about Dave in there as I could. And then when we got to the end of it, Linda suggested that we call it. Well, she originally said, "Well, I really wanted a song that said something about on tonsils and sneakers because that's how Dave would introduce himself on stage." And we already had the song kind of written and sort of hashed out, and I think we might have demoed it at that point. And I said, "Well, call it on tonsils and sneakers. I mean, it doesn't, it's not going to affect the song, and it'll be a good talking point because what does this mean? So
Yeah,
that's where that came from. So
very cool, very cool. Yeah, and that definitely describes his his part in the band there too.
yeah, yeah. I
You
mean,
know that
and the video that we do for the single has a little clip in the front of it where he's introducing himself and he says, "And on tonsils and sneakers,
that's
Lonesome
perfect.
Dave." So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. First time I saw them was in the Orange Bowl, early '80s. It was. What a great
right,
show! And I was a
yeah,
fan. Long before then, from back in the '70s, I was a fan.
sure,
And
sure,
just great musicians, really great
yeah,
musicians.
yeah.
Now,
Roger is a consummate professional, and 50 years on, he's been doing this, and he's just an absolute rock star. you know,
literally.
yeah.
Now, I hear that you're working on a new live album too.
We've got a live album that we're working on. We recorded pretty much all the shows last year, and we've just kind of gone through and picked out um, songs that we felt really were good performances, and hopefully some stuff that hasn't been on. Foghat has a few live records out, and you know, thinking about the fans, you don't really want to ask the fans to buy the same song 10
Right.
times. Right, Rolling Stones. So we decided we decided they'll never see this. We decided to try and find some songs that hadn't been on live records before. So that was kind of a challenge. But I'm happy with the way it's turning out. I think it's really going to be a good project, and I can't wait for people to hear it.
And I heard on this newest release that came out in November, Kim Simmons
Hmm.
actually co-wrote some of the stuff, right?
Yeah, Kim. When Roger and Kim were, I think it was back when they were working on Under the Influence because Kim played on that record. And he told Roger at the time, he said, I'd really like to write some songs for Foghat. And Roger said, well, that'd be great as long as you play on them. So Kim wrote the songs, but unfortunately passed away before we had a chance to record them.
Right.
Um, but he Kim was a beautiful guy. I got to know him a little bit. I met him obviously through Roger and the guys, and when they did their record release party for Under the Influence. We did it in New York at BB King's, and I got to meet Kim there. I think that's probably the first time I met him. But we it was another thing where we just kind of clicked and hit it off, and he was just a really really kind soul and a good guy. I remember when I got the gig with Foghat, um, the first show, I'm in the hotel room, you know, biting my fingernails, going over my lyrics, trying to remember how these songs go. I got one text, and it was from Kim, and he said, "Just remember, it's just a gig." And it was so comforting to get that message from him, and I keep it on my phone. I still have it, but
That's
he
nice.
was just a really really cool guy.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about him. I never had the privilege to meet him, but all the guys
Yeah,
that are still playing just have wonderful things to say about him.
yeah. He was a genuinely kind person. I'm grateful that I got to know him,
Yep, and a great songwriter and artist.
and a great guitar player.
Yes, I know that you love Jimi Hendrix.
Hmm. Very much.
Who introduced you to Jimi Hendrix music, or when was the first time you heard it? And tell us a little about how that inspired you to play the guitar.
We had the town that I grew up in. um, had a mall at that time. I'm come from a pretty small town, but we did have a mall and it had a record store in it. And I would go to this record store and spend my school lunch money or my allowance or whatever cash I had when I was 16, 17, 18 years old on cassettes at the time. And I didn't really know, I mean, I liked popular music, I liked rock and roll, I liked all kinds of different stuff, but I didn't really, I wasn't passionate about anybody or any type of music particularly. And I'm in there one day and I remember picking up the cassette. It was the soundtrack to the movie Jimi Hendrix. It was the documentary that came out in 72 about Jimmy. And I didn't know anything about him. I'd heard the name, but I didn't know that he was a guitar player. I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know anything. And this is pre-internet, so it's not like you could Google it.
Yep.
Um, so I bought this cassette and I go out to my car and put it in. And it was like the scene in The Wizard of Oz where it switches from black and white into color. It was like all of a
Uh,
sudden everything was just Technicolor. And I was immediately just overwhelmed and it was the weirdest thing. It never really happened to me before or since, but it was one of those things where it's just like I know what I want to do. I know what I want to how I want to sound. I want to be this guy. And my parents got me a guitar. A friend of mine who's a great guitar player uh, showed me some stuff to kind of get me started. This is when I was 18, I think, 18 or 19. And then about 6 months into it, my dad set it up for me to meet Buddy Guy because I was into, at that point, Jimmy had sort of opened the floodgates, but then my friend who was teaching me some stuff on the guitar said, well, if you like Jimmy, you might like this other guitar player, Stevie Ray Vaughan. So I
oh
checked him
yeah.
out. And then, of course, through Stevie, I started hearing about Guitar Slim and Buddy Guy and BB King. And so and then I really got into the blues. So my dad sets it up for me to meet Buddy. He was on tour with Junior Wells. And went to his hotel room the next day and got a guitar lesson. We sat across from each other on these twin beds playing guitars. And Buddy was showing me stuff and telling me stories about Little Walter and Sonny Boy Williamson. And I went back home
Wow.
and, not only now did I want to be Jimi Hendrix, but I also wanted to be in a blues band and be Buddy Guy. And so that was a little harder to pull off because I didn't have any blues musicians in my hometown that I knew of. But about a year after I met Buddy, he called me. I mean, we stayed in touch. I sat in with him a few times, and uh, he invited me up to the grand opening of his club in Chicago, and he called me up one day and said, "Hey, I'm getting ready to change up my band. Do you want to play in my band?" And I was like,
Nice.
"Yeah." And he said, "Okay." He goes, "Have you got a passport?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, get a passport, and we're leaving in 2 weeks." I said, "Okay." So got a passport, got a one-way ticket to Chicago. Didn't know when I was coming back or if I was coming back. Didn't even know if I was how much I was getting paid or if I was getting paid. In fact, my dad had to call Buddy himself and say because I was too embarrassed to ask him. And so it's because I'm just a kid. And
Yeah.
he said, is he going to get paid? And he's like, yeah, he's going to get paid, and he's going to get paid well. And if he is smart with his money, he'll do well. So Buddy picked me up at the airport and took me to his house, cooked supper for me. He had a big record collection, obviously, and he was letting me just go through his records and play stuff. And
Wow.
that's the first time I heard Earl Hooker was at Buddy's house. The Muddy Waters song "You Shook Me" came on, and the slide guitar in the beginning of that, I was like, "Wow, is that Muddy?" And he goes, "No, man, that's Hooker." And I was like, "John Lee Hooker?" He said, "No, no, no, Earl Hooker." And so Earl Hooker's by far my favorite slide guitar player and probably the greatest slide guitar player that ever lived. But so after we hung out for a little while, he we got in the van and went to the club, and the rest of the band was there. And Buddy said, "Okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow in Canada." And we all loaded up in the van and drove to Canada. And Buddy flew in the next day and played the first gig in Toronto. And that was my first gig with Buddy.
Wow. That must have been something. Now, how old were you then?
I was 20, I think, 20 or maybe 21. Um, it was it was an amazing. I spent 10 years with Buddy and learned everything from Buddy, from being with him and from him showing me stuff and teaching me stuff. I'd never been away from home. I'd never been in a band, and it was all new to me.
Yeah.
Um, you got to learn how to check into a hotel. You've got to learn how to fly on an airplane. You got to learn how to play these gigs. And I was standing next to a master entertainer every night, watching how he would interact with the crowd and how he would get them going. And so a lot of the things that I do now are things that I know I learned from Buddy.
Wow.
Um, but for 10 years, he let me he gave me the space to figure it out. He would show me stuff. He never refused to show me anything. Like we'd sit backstage before a show and be warming up on our guitars, and I'd be like, "How do you play that John Lee Hooker thing?" And he'd show it to me, and he'd show it to me until I got it. And he was very patient with me. Um, and I was so young and so naive that I wasn't nervous, because the magnitude of what was going on didn't hit me. I didn't
Yeah, yeah,
realize that, I'm standing next to this legend, and of course, if you start thinking like that, then you'll never get anywhere. You can't move if you let that kind of stuff take over your thinking.
yep.
So it one of the hardest things for me when I do interviews is they'll ask me, well, what's one thing that you learned from Buddy? And there isn't one thing. It's I learned everything from, you know 15 minutes early is being on time when you're in the Buddy Guy organization.
Yeah.
Uh, if you get on the bus and Buddy's already on the bus, you're late. So we uh, we learned everything, and I learned everything, and I'm grateful to. I talked to him yesterday. I called him up just to check on him, see how he's doing, and we always it's funny because we always have the same kinds of conversations. We'll start talking almost immediately, and it goes off into something that we've talked about 1,000 times, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's a comfortable relationship.
That's wonderful. Yeah. It's very special, the relationship that you make with people that you share music with. It's different.
Right, right.
I recently lost my guitarist during
Oh,
COVID, and it's different. It's different than a brother. It's different than a friend. It's more. It's something
well,
different.
you're
I
you're
can't explain it.
with music. Well, with musicians, you're sharing a part of your soul that you don't really share with anybody else. You
That's
that
right.
that communication doesn't happen on any other level except with another musician. So it's a very intimate relationship for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So, where are you headed? Where's the next gig?
We play Vegas 2 days after Christmas, and then we go down to Flagstaff, Arizona, and play for New Year's. And then we come home for about 2 weeks, I think, and then we just start. We're gigging every week and just rolling. So I
All
can't wait.
right.
I mean, my suitcase is packed right now. I'm ready to go.
All right. So, hopefully, when you're playing close to home here, well, home for Roger and Linda, I'm right here,
Yeah.
so I'd love to see you
Well,
guys.
good. We got some gigs coming up close to their place, so we should be able to get you out for something.
Lots of fun stuff. Lots of fun stuff Foghat has done through the years, and I
Yeah.
appreciate the music and appreciate the people making the music, and that's what we
Yeah.
do here at Music Legacy. So I'd love to see you inside our community platform and promoting where the band is going to be and anything that you think that might inspire people in the industry would be wonderful.
That would be great. That would be
Yeah.
great. I'd be honored. Yeah.
All right, great, great. All right, well, Scott, thank you so much for being with us, and
Thank
I
you.
hope to meet you in person real soon.
Hope so too. Hope so
All
too.
right. Thanks, man.
All right.
Appreciate it.